In the Know, a radio program talking to the newsmakers in Ogle, Lee, DeKalb counties and beyond, keeping you in the know. Here's your host, Charles Van Horn.
Happy Father's Day, another edition of In the Know. Joining me, State Senator Lee Arellano. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
And let's start off Father's Day, always a great holiday. Grilling out this afternoon?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it's the one of the many dad roles that I embrace. So yes, we'll definitely be doing some grilling.
Now, do you got the white New Balance shoes to go with that?
Not yet.
You haven't earned the New Balance shoes yet?
No, 5 kids and I don't have the New Balance shoe. But my oldest is only 14. I think there's a age requirement of how old your oldest kid has to be before you get him, and I must not have hit it. I do crack the dad jokes, though. Yeah. I got them.
Because, you see, the white New Balance are perfect because you can wear them for any formal occasion, and then once they get a little dirty, then they turn into lawn mowing shoes.
Yes.
You are, this is, how many years have you been a state senator now?
So I just got sworn in January.
Yeah.
So I am a freshman. I'm in my freshman year.
Did you get any wedgies in the halls in Springfield down there yet?
So they do have a bit of a tradition where your first bill, they kind of ask you ridiculous questions about it, just off the wall nonsense. Mine wasn't too bad. I think some of the other freshmen got it a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I think my bills caught them unawares and they were prepared for the other one. So I like to sneak under the radar there a little bit, get my stuff accomplished, and everybody looks around and goes, wait a minute, we didn't ridicule them enough.
Well, we'll talk about Springfield politics and things being slipped into bills a little later on.
Much more nefarious versions.
Let's talk about how you got your start. Because you were a mayor of Dixon.
Yes.
And a tumultuous time, really, in Dixon when you were there. But how'd you get your start in local and community politics?
So, honestly, my first activism started up, the root of it was in 2005 when I was on my first combat deployment. And I'm ashamed to say, I don't believe I'd ever voted before that. I was 24 years old, and I got over there, and I realized what these guys do, the decisions these politicians make, has some very real world impacts. And I went over there kind of neoconservative. We got to go fight them over there, so we don't fight over here. And I saw some of the realities of war and how we were conducting it. And I found I had some pretty strong disagreements with parts of it. So I came back as almost not quite an anti-war Republican, but much more leery of how easily we kind of let the military-industrial complex, the big money guys, control some of the decision making. And so I came back, and I've almost never missed an election since then in terms of a voter or even getting involved.
Yeah.
And I mean municipal elections, primary elections, general elections. I missed one when I was in Saudi Arabia. They couldn't give me my absentee ballot in time. But that's what got me active.
Yeah.
And I came back, and I was volunteering for some congressional races and organizing events to try to kick out a guy that I'd been trying to message while I was deployed, and he wasn't answering me.
That's what I wanted to find out.
So that got me riled up.
What the motivation is, because everyone has a different story.
Yeah.
I always call it the kicking the dog story.
Right.
It's when you see somebody do something egregious. They, quote, kick the dog, and that lit the spark in you, and you went, this guy didn't reply to my messages.
Right.
I'm going to get his behind.
Yeah. I was a deployed soldier. I had some key concerns. Didn't even get like an automated response, really, or a staff response. And when I got back home, the responses weren't really any more forthcoming. And so I thought, forget party. This guy is not doing his job, right? And that's kind of how I ran for my first office as well. So that's what got me involved in activism. What got me to run for my first office, I ran for state rep over a decade ago. It was a 4-person race. The man who won, State Representative Tom Demmer, has now served his 10 years and is actually doing economic development in our region. Great guy. We ended up being good friends. So I came in second in a 4-man race. I think I lost by 351 votes, but who's counting, Tom? But what got me involved in that was I was frustrated by Tom's predecessor, who was still in office when I started running, some of his votes on tax increases and against private schools and educational opportunities, which is a very big deal to me. Important issues, education and access to education and private education, homeschooling. Those issues are all very important to me. And so I announced, and the incumbent announced he wasn't going to run for re-election after that. And so what people don't know about that first race of mine is even though Tom beat me and did a great job, by the way, as a state rep, I really kind of accomplished my goal before even all the candidates announced, because my goal was to get somebody fresher, newer, somebody who hopefully wouldn't be voting for as many tax increases and would be supporting private education. And Tom did all those things.
Yeah.
So I really feel like I won as an activist, even though I lost as a candidate.
And then you actually did get some things
that
did go
brings
your
us
way.
to Dixon. And so I had, up till that point, been more focused on national kind of congressional races, volunteering and helping those out, state level races. And when the Dixon fraud broke, the $54 million over 20 years, largest municipal fraud in U.S. history, I was a local business owner. I had opened the Jimmy John's in Dixon, and I hadn't been paying as much attention. I voted in local elections, but I really wasn't following them as closely as some of the other stuff, which I think is a trap a lot of young people fall into.
Yeah.
Because that's what the media and the news and the candidates hit you with, right?
Yeah.
And I saw those numbers, and I realized I had spent my life making fun of Chicago and their corruption and their fraud and all their jailed politicians, and I needed to shut up because my own backyard, per person, per capita, was probably more corrupt than Chicago.
Yeah, look over your shoulder.
Holy cow. And I realized how much money gets spent by school boards and cities and counties and townships. And I said, you know what? If I really care about government reform, forget the fact that we don't pay mayors almost anything.
Yeah.
I think my first year I made like $9,000.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money for the amount of responsibility and stuff that was happening. So forget that you don't pay them well, and forget that it's not glamorous and you're not in the news. This is where we can get real reform done. And so I ran for mayor in Dixon. A number of folks who had never run for office before, we all ran. We didn't know each other, but we kind of all got in at the same time, and not a single incumbent won. Everybody who was in office got swept out. I don't know when since then that's happened in any of our 8,000 governments across Illinois. It was a very unique time. But I said, I want to reform government, and this is where we need it. And so I ran for mayor. I won. I spent my first term, my first 4 years, really focused on the boring financial reforms, government reforms, consolidating public works, putting more checks and balances and financial oversight.
Keeping the toilets flushing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, and the potholes filled.
The basic work of doing the job. And my second 4 years, because the first 4 years we really got a lot of those reforms done and moving, the second 4 years got to be more about what you would normally consider a mayor involved in, which is getting road work done. We set records for the amount of road work, multiple years that Dixon had ever accomplished, getting economic development done.
And that's a massive.
That's been huge. And if you go along I-88 or along the river, either one in Dixon, any of our big project areas, you see development that hasn't happened on that scale in Dixon, certainly in my lifetime, maybe ever since the founding, since the original ferry got set up. Because when you find out who's been robbing your money and you start running government better, the answer had been the people of Dixon had been paying plenty in taxes all these years to get it done. It had just been getting mismanaged and stolen. And so that's what courts kind of pushed me to look at Illinois and Springfield. I think we have a lot of the same challenges, a lot of debt carried at the state level, a lot of corruption. At the state level, obviously, we just are sentencing Michael Madigan, the longest-serving speaker. He's a huge genesis behind that. There is a lot of our state taxes that have been wasted due to debt spending, due to fraud, corruption, going into deals and pocketbooks and all kinds of places they shouldn't. So that's kind of my genesis. I started off really angry about how the Iraq war was getting handled and how these politicians kind of talk doublespeak. And then I got involved in state level stuff. And then I got involved in local. And now I'm kind of worked my way back out as I really accomplished what I wanted to do as a mayor. And I asked the people, I said, hey, send me to Springfield, see if I can do some of the same work. And so this is my freshman year and we're going at it.
Being a freshman in Springfield, obviously you talked a little bit about the hazing that happens. Finding your way around the halls.
Sure.
Finding people who can connect you to things.
Right.
And even though it's a supermajority in Springfield and you're in the opposition.
Yes.
you have to, no matter what, work across the aisle, don't you?
You do. If you want to get anything done, you have to build relationships. You got to be careful about who you build them with. Make sure they're ethical people. But you have to build relationships. And I would say, we were in session. We just got done at the end of May. We were in session from January through May. The vast majority of that, there's opportunities to get things done, represent your district. There are a few moments each cycle where that supermajority really kicks in and they don't care about you. But I'd say about 85% of the time, and people don't see this because it doesn't make the news, we're just running government. We're trying to fix things, make them better. There are, I want to say, about 24 bills I co-sponsored that we were able to pass, things that helped families that were, trying to get out of violent situations, things that helped local governments clean up, make more changes so constituents have more transparency or more access to local government. Lots of little things like that where we're just slowly making it better, except for budget season. During budget season, they do not care about you or your district. That part's hard to swallow.
It's a little bit like a pirate movie, I think, sometimes. It's just swashbuckling and swords and chests full of gold. And that's what's moving around in Springfield when it comes time for the budget.
Yes.
And the governor, of course, went and paraded around a balanced budget, but there's a bit of air quotes there about what it's balanced. When you guys have to come up with answers to some of those questions. There are times when it's like, this isn't solvable, and everyone just sort of shrugs and moves on. Isn't that sort of the Springfield way a lot of times?
It is. There's a lot of can kicking and dodge the problem, and it'll be somebody else's problem. And that goes for both policy and budgets. In the case of the budget, specifically, there is a lot of fund sweeps, which often happen during tight budget years. For example, we're pulling money out of the statewide road fund, which we all know, roads and bridges, we need more work done there.
OSLID also got hit, too.
OSLID got hit. They didn't raise the amount of money given to folks with developmental disabilities. There's a lot of things they capped, didn't give inflationary adjustments. And to me, it was very illuminating to see which parts they cut, which weren't a lot, but there were some, which parts they froze, including folks with developmental disabilities and some of these parts of the budget that, don't donate to politicians, even though they're very important, and which parts they increased or added money to or included pork spending. And that, the budget to me was the most frustrating part. I enjoyed committee work all year long. I enjoyed sinking in problems. There are times when what I wanted to happen didn't happen because we're not in the majority, but I don't necessarily think it was unethical or not transparent. The budget, that kind of flips. There are parts of the budget process that are not ethical, that, we moved a shell bill to meet transparency laws in the state to say, hey, look, we're doing notice, we're giving days for journalists and people to look at. And when you look inside the bill, the Senate president himself said there's nothing in the bill. There was like 3 lines, and they just passed an empty bill to say, well, we're meeting the time requirements. They wouldn't put the actual language in that bill for like 2 more days. So that part is blatantly unethical. Quite frankly, I think the Supreme Court itself, which has been gerrymandered, fuels that unethical behavior.
The Illinois State Supreme Court.
The Illinois State Supreme Court, not our national state Supreme Court. The Illinois State Supreme Court turns a blind eye to things that are against our state constitution or state laws sometimes. They've turned a blind eye to gerrymandering. They refuse to hear the cases. They've done that for a while. They've ruled that as long as the title of a bill doesn't change, we're meeting transparency laws.
And that leads to all sorts of things being appended to bills.
Shenanigans.
Where you have a bill about road construction, and the next thing you know, you're funding a marshland or something strange. In our closing minutes here, just real quick, when do you go back to Springfield? What are you looking forward most to try to tackle for the next session?
I think we have to do a better job handling our pension debt. The key to unlocking the state of Illinois' financial power, and we do have it if we get out of debt, is tackling this pension debt both in the city of Chicago for their 11 pension funds and our statewide, our almost half a dozen statewide funds. the vast amount of debt spending we have comes out of pensions. And in the case of our state budget, we spent about $8 billion on pension debt. Not on pensions.
Yeah.
We spent a little over $11 billion on pensions. I'm just talking about debt payments catching up. And the sheer amount of money that $8 billion can do, you look at what we haven't been funding, we could fund all of that and still send money for property tax relief and income tax relief and help our economic development with that $8 billion.
My unsolicited advice for pension problems: scratch off lottery tickets for everyone.
There we go.
State Senator Lee Arellano, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Glad to be here.
Thank you for listening to this week's In the Know. The program returns next week at this time with another great conversation with someone from your community.